Good evening, everyone. I trust that all is okay. All right. Okay. There we are. Social media sorted with a bit of luck. I don't know if it's an extra bank holiday in Hungary today or not, because some of the normal postings haven't happened. So we will see. Sorry, just while I bend down and answer sign out of mind. I'm not really disappearing on you. I promise. Let's have a decent brush. That might be reasonably decent. Yeah, that'll do. Yeah. And then we'll just have a little see who comes in. Right, let's just pop some of these pieces out of the way so I don't lose them, because that's usually the next trick, isn't it, to lose all of these bits. There we are. Oh, I don't need that bit. That's definitely not meant to be that. There we are. Right. Hi, Juliana. Welcome. There we are. Oh, yeah, let me see where we can go. So then we can just do a little bit of thing. So in one of the latest molds from Stamperia was a mold with lots of circus tanks in it. So, and I thought, circus tents. Summer. And then I thought, Master of Magic. So there we are. Let's just do that. So I have a wooden board here that we're going to be using. Good evening, Sheila. Welcome. And we're keeping it fairly simple tonight. Simple, she says. Well, that's the plan. That is the plan. So I have a rice paper that I have just pushed into the recess in my wooden piece. There we are. Let's just shuffle that down there. Let's line that up along there so it's reasonably straight. Got a nice sharp blade in there so I can take that off. Excellent. I don't mind a little bit of it being, I might just need a little shave more. There we are. Maybe not. As the case may be. There we are. Oh, she says, come on, behave. Yes, it wasn't intended to cut that into our directions, but there we are. We won't worry about that. And let's see if we can get this one in a little bit better. There we are. So pop that into there. Pop that into there. See if we can line that up. So this is an A4 rice paper from Master of Magic collection, and it's intended to be used, I think, in portrait, but that doesn't work for the project, so we're going to go landscape, because why not? And that piece I will put away, and we'll see what we can think of to do with them rather than binning them, because why not? There we are. So that might seem a slightly odd thing to do, but that's the plan. Let's get this into here. I haven't prepped anything tonight beyond getting the pieces out that I wanted. Now, I have a feeling people might struggle to find the live tonight, because I've had to go live through the event page and through the Pentart icon rather than finding it in the flow on the page. I'm not convinced that it's been shared anywhere else, but there we are. But that's life. So I'm just going to pop. I've got this unprimed. I'm not worried about this bit being primed today. And I've just got some decoupage glue and varnish in matte. I could be using one of the others. That would work. And this will help seal the wood a little bit. And also act as a glue. And that's also fine. We'll do this in stages. Or one of the ways we might find that it all sinks in. And that's why not typically I would always say prime first, because otherwise everything, including your glues, will stick into your project. And that's not necessarily what you want. There we go. So let's just pop that into there. We've got a reasonable quantity of glue on there. And then let's just put that into that corner. Hope that we've got it straight-ish ahead, and then we can push out that. So that little folding trick that I did, pushing it in, just makes such a huge difference. I'm going to pop my bottom down. I feel it's going to be painful tonight. It just doesn't look like very many people are coming on to watch, but hey ho, such be life. Let's just make sure we get enough glue into here. And I might actually change my mind. I know, Hobart Forest might change my mind, but I'm going to change my mind, which will require me to go grab something, I think, but hey ho, maybe not. I was contemplating doing a structure paste around the edge, but actually I think I'm not, because it'll take forever to dry, and forever isn't a good place to be, is it? There we are, and I've done that technique multiple times. So there we are. So let's just pop this, use my hands, gently push this down, make sure I haven't got any air bubbles in. There we are. There we are, there we are. Excuse me, ladies, while I just have a sneeze. There we are. I'm just going to give that a little bit of a blast, and then I can take a craft knife into this edge and straighten it out. Where I didn't quite line it up properly on the my cutter. My bad though. Not anyone else's. If I try and do that with a blade, if it's not completely dry, we will struggle. She says, well, maybe we won't. Maybe it looks like the knives have missed gone walk. Oh, there it is. There is my blade. There we are. There we go. So let's just, oh no, that's, there we are. Oops, and then I'm going to seal it in a minute anyway. So let's just take that sharp blade into that edge. There we are. Get rid of that extra bit. So if I was going to use the structure paste, it wouldn't matter so much, but hey ho. Right, so there we are. We're now nicely-ish into there. Let's get rid of that edge. You can see a little bit that I don't like, and then let's just seal this all in place. And it won't matter about those mushrooms being on the wonk, because that's not where they're going to stay. It really isn't. So we could just use the outside as a frame. There we are. Let's just pop this onto here. When they say I'm not intending. A little bubble under there, so let's just push that out, making this very complicated. Because sometimes you don't need life to be complicated. You can let your products do all of the hard work. There we are. Let's see what else is going on. Yeah, really, it does look very quiet tonight, but hey ho. There we are. That'll be life, isn't it? And there's an ice cream man. Our ice cream man come round. I think it dates to the days when people didn't really have freezers. So the ice cream man would come round and he would have a little bell and play some music. There we are. So this will glue this in and seal it, and will allow me to add stuff on the top and white back if I want to. I'm not actually intending on adding lots onto here. Hi, Sandorn. I think that's probably correct. It looks like it's a French name, so I apologise because I'm not very good at for other languages. You know, it's a typical complaint for most people about the Brits is that we rely very heavily on the fact that English is spoken by most people, or a smattering is spoken by most people. There we are. So I apologise if I've made a mess of your name. There we are. So as I say, this is Master of Magic collection. It's a collection from Stamperia. But you could use anything that had a little bit of a seam at the bottom. Get rid of the air bubbles. Make sure that that's sealed down. Then I'm going to even up those brush strokes. There we are. Let's just get rid of. I've got some air bubbles. I'm just pushing them out. And because I've got lots of glue on this surface at the moment, I'm able to brush the air that I've got trapped there out in a way that I wouldn't be able to if I hadn't got lots of air there. So that is the decoupage glue mat. I'll just pop that off to the side. That can sit over there. And then we've got, there we are. So I don't know about you, but in the UK, tents are often just plain canvas, really, not necessarily coloured. But we're going for a red and cream look. So these have been cast with resin from the mould. The balloons are also in the mould, and this is my preference to prime my resin pieces. You don't technically need to. I just feel that for me, I get a better coverage and a better result when I do so. So you don't need a thick layer, but you do, yeah, you do need a layer. And I'm using primer paste, so the thick gesso from Pentart, because it will dry relatively quickly. If I had, and these are plasticized surfaces, so I could opt to use bonding primer instead for my base layer, but that requires 2 layers, and it really does need at least 12 hours plus to dry before you paint over it, so it's properly set into place. Whereas the primer paste will settle with a blast of a heat gun relatively quickly. So there we are. So there's the plans for what we're intending doing. There we are. So there's one. So there are several different circus tent styles on the mould. So we're just going to go with the flow with colouring these. I've got all of those out whilst that background piece dries. And while in my head I'm thinking about whether I want to change my mind with the frame. I'm definitely not going to put the texture paste or the structure paste on it, because I've done that on a few occasions, and it just takes a wee while to settle down, which is fine, but we can do other things instead. Sometimes other things are better, or just alternative, because there are no rights and there are no wrongs with this. So there we are. I think, does anyone know if it's an extra public holiday in Hungary today? I know they don't always have the same public holidays as the UK. There we are. So we've had a bank holiday weekend, but everyone went back to work on Monday. So this is definitely normal service. There we are. So there we are. Let's just get these painted, and then we'll think about, well, I've got the colours out on my desk. To be fair, I don't have to think about what colours I want to use for this, because they're all sitting nicely ready to use out there. Right. Yeah, let's just use that. So the reason for I went was I was contemplating grabbing my black gesso for this sign, which is in the mould and says illusion, because a lot of circus acts are illusions, aren't they? There we are, and some hot air balloons just to fill the sky with something. You didn't have it in Scotland, thank you. Yeah, I find it, yeah, it's all very strange, isn't it? Because I think in Scotland they have some bank holidays that we don't have in England. So even though we're part of a United Nation, there are many differences. There we are. Let's just pop that onto there. Onto there. There we are. And then we'll grab a heat gun and give this a little quick blast. The paint, as ever with my makes, it will be the painting that takes the hot minute, won't it? Of course it will. So there we are. Let's lid that. Let's lid that. Let's pop that in there. Let's just grab that. Oh, there we are. There we are. We can pop that out of the way. We won't be needing that again. And we won't be needing that again. Let's just give that. I can see a big thick layer of blue down there. So let's just get rid of the lumpiness of that. Let's just give these all a bit of a dry. These things along the way. Always helpful to have things properly dry, isn't it? Whilst we're doing things like this. Yeah, you can still see the white down. Particularly at the bottom of there, that is wet glue. This is not a clear colour. So let's just give these all a good dry. So ladies, I don't know what else we want to do. So I have thinking about projects for the next few weeks. We haven't got a Stamperia launch due for another couple of weeks, I think. And then it'll take me about a week to get it, so that's longer. We're thinking about return to schools, and also I guess autumn is around the corner. So what would we like for projects for the next couple of weeks? Back to school something, or September autumnal things, or shall we stick with more floral summer-based celebratory things and eke out the last of the summer? Suggestions are willingly received as to the type of concept that you might like me to think about. They don't have to be any more specific in concept. So, return to school, autumn colours, celebrations, any sort of type of celebration, more themes. What would you like to arrive next week and the week after? Suggestions willingly received. Okay. There we are. Oof, she says with glue on her hands. There we are. So let's see what we've got. We've got an ivory, or cream white. We have red wine. We have Bordeaux. So these are two really different shades of red. Okay, Sheila, I can definitely do that for one of them. I can find autumn. That's not a problem. We can find pumpkins. We'll have a think about what we want to do with that. And so we've got those for the tents, but I've also got on my desk turquoise, mint, and a different turquoise. So turquoise blue, turquoise green. Let's use the one that's open. Mint. So 3 different shades of that. And we had a brown. We had a brown and a grey. Well, they will appear, won't they? Of course they will. That's very... Aha. There we are. Brown and vintage grey. There we are. So that is our colour palette, because we've got different shades of the red in the papers, and I think these as blues will work and provide some contrast. And then we've got the mushroom colour for those. So that is how I decided to choose my colour palette. Let's just pop these into different pieces and find a nice, smallish brush. Might be a challenge. Oh, she says. So let us just do a little bit of playing with these. So I'm going to pop that into there. In fact, I'm going to pop this all over. It's a chalk paint, but it could just as easily be an ivory matte. And we're going to add in some colours. So let's just give all of these a little coat of the ivory, of this cream white. It's a chalky paint. We're going for matte finishes today. this is definitely different to the gesso in terms of colour. There we are. Even if the camera doesn't show it very well. There we are. And then we're going to see whether we can manage to do some stripes with the reds. We'll get there. Might not be the tidiest of striping tonight, but hey ho, that's okay. You'll get the idea and the concept. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. There we are. Yeah, we're definitely getting some glare tonight. It's always a challenge, isn't it? So 2 done. There we are. Let's just take that so we don't have great big thick blobs of this everywhere. And I've reverted back to the old favourites because they've got lots of colours to choose from. These are water-based acrylic paints and they're quite durable and it just makes life easy. And we're going to have a nice base here for working with. Have I done that one? I have done that one. There we are. So we'll pop this over here. There we are. Right. So that can be lidded. Hi Anna, welcome my darling. Welcome, welcome. Much appreciated. Let's just get rid of that and let's just have a clean of the mucky hands. Then we're going to have some blues for some of these hot air balloons. And for that word. So there we are. Yeah, we can see quite nicely there. De-yuck the hands, because otherwise all that you'll be able to see is my mucky sticky mitts, and I risk putting white where I don't want it, which is all very well and good, but not quite the look I'm wanting this evening. Yeah. Might help for intricate detailing, and some of them might look well. So let us start with our hot air balloons, which we're going to keep reasonably simple. So this is the turquoise blue. It's a beautiful, rich, decadent colour that mine looks like it's seen better days, but hey ho. Oh no, it's still workable. Let's just pop some of that onto there. That'll be my bad for not having closed it up properly. So let's just have some simple activities for these. When I'm not going to be going for difficult, complicated, because life is too short. I'm going to add the details back in ultimately anyway. There we are. Let me just grab some water. That will be better, and thin that paint down. I'm going to get nicer coverage if I don't have it quite so thick. And that's always a positive. There we are. I don't necessarily want to have that too thick. And there we are. There is that balloon. Yeah. So let's just have a little white back. Sorry, I hadn't moved off screen, so that wasn't very helpful. So if I then just wipe that back, it'll soften those colours and bring out the detail. That was not completely dry, as in the gesso was not completely dry. So let's just add. So this is the mint. No, this is the turquoise green. There we are. There we are. Let's come back into screen. That's always helpful. And because I want to water that back, lift it back. So instead of adding antiquing gels and more mediums to add my depth and my details in, I am using the acrylic paints and just wiping it back to help build the detail. It's just a different way, and it just subtly changes things. There we are. Let's just come into here. Why not? Why not? Why not? It should be blue all the way down, but we'll change it all up. Why not? There we are. It just softens it. So in effect, I'm using my paints here as my antiquing colours. Here we are, and this is hint. Oh, she says, I didn't need anywhere near that amount of paint out there. But hey ho, hey ho, hey ho. There we are. Why not? There we are. Going to add some of this, and we're going to pop that back in. There we are. Oh, she says putting that in. That's what happens when you have too much paint around, and you end up with a mess. There we are. That's better. Let's just take that dark blue, and we're just going to cover this in this one. So in that turquoise blue, as opposed to the turquoise green. There we are. And I could have used the patina colours from the wall decor paints. That would also have worked quite nicely. Oh. There we are. Excellent. Good. Well, that's a start for those. I'm just going to give these a little bit of a blast, because why not? And then we'll do some painting for some of these other pieces. lots of painting to do. So let us grab the bourdon. A little bit of, well, let's be a little bit more generous with that. I love this colour. It's beautiful. And let us grab the red wine, which is another gorgeous colour. It's a while since I've had some of these paints out. And there's the red wine. So you can see on my desk that they are definitely different shades. It's always a blessing when it looks like it's meant to on camera. There we are. Pop that onto there. Pop that onto there. Let's find. That brush is definitely not in very good condition. And that might drive me balmy. Let's drive this one then. Right. So let us paint our circus tent. Let's start with the red. This is going to be. This is when I regret having picked such detailed moulds, isn't it? But this is something I don't think anyone actually else really shows. And seeing someone painting the moulds when I first started painting moulds was actually the thing that made me feel that actually I could do it. I'm not necessarily the most artistic individual in this world. Let's just paint that. Some of them are not as intricate as the others, so that's always a blessing, isn't it? There we are. Okay. Small brush, steady hand, just as well that I was a children's or newborn surgeon in a past life, and that my hands are relatively steady when it comes to doing these things, because otherwise it might be a bit more of a headache. And notice that I am turning my pieces around to make my life as easy as possible. I will not go boss side. There we are. Just do that. There we are. We might need a little bit of a tidy up, but that's also okay. We're happy to admit that sometimes things need a tidy up. That went offline, but that's okay. Let's just make life easy for ourselves there. Because sometimes you just have to. Let's turn this upside down. And then we can get into that depth. There we are. Okay. Now you can see why I chose to paint the ivory in first, but we might just need a little bit of a tidy up. We might tidy up off live. Yeah. I'm just having to angle this so I can see the pieces and the lines. And we're definitely going to have a tidy up of that bit, but that's okay. We can do that. Good. So patience is a virtue. And if you weren't on a live, you could spend many an hour happily wailing away the time to do this with a bit more detail. There we are. Oops, don't want a thick lump on there. Yeah, you see, up close I can. Well, that's my feeling, Sheila. I have to be said. Sorry, I'm sort of a bit zoned out because this is. Yeah. I think when I first started, I think that I was quite put off by mould painting because I didn't think I could do it. But actually, it is just a question of having a bit of confidence in your ability and just going for it and simplifying things so that, see, that's looking far better on camera because than it is to me up front. And I'm definitely, yeah, I can see where I need to come back in and tidy up some of that. Cream, but that's okay. And that would definitely have to wait until it's properly dry before I can do that. Don't rush. Don't get distracted. I do have a fairly thin brush here, but maybe not one that's as thin as it might be. Well, there we are. There. Yeah, we're definitely needing a tidy up over there, but that's fine. So let's just have a bit more of that paint over here. A bit more of that Bordeaux right onto there. I'm sure whoever designed these molds didn't think about how they were going to be painted. I strongly suspect that they digitally coloured them as part of pre-production. And then one of the Stamperia creative then worked their magic. But it will be fine by the time we've finished. And I always think that mixed media makes go through a stage where things are looking a bit mucky, and then it all comes together. So let's have some bright red curtains. We might be doing some very simplified pieces for some of these pieces because I'm conscious of the time. Oh, I think I'm conscious of the time. I can't actually see the clock on my computer at this point. There we are. There we are. I'll pop this down in a minute and then we're going to let it dry before I tackle some of the other bits. on it. I'm going to have some blue swatch. Oh, you see, that's what happens because that's not dry properly. Excellent. There. Right. Traumas. I'm going to go for a plain red roof. We're going to make life easy for ourselves. We're not going to stripe it all because we might just be here for the cows coming home. And much as I love the cows intensely, I do not wish to be here at midnight. And I suspect nor do you. Yeah. Right, let's just okay, let's just slow it down. Let's pop that down there, and we're just going to go in there, come along that edge. Come along that edge. I can see an edge. There we are. Okay, that could be worse. There we are. Let's just paint the doors in here, or the curtains, as the case may be. Sorry. Okay. Yes, I have picked up the correct red. I thought for a horrible minute then I'd picked up the Bordeaux when I'd meant to pick up the red wine. This will all come good. Bit of wax, bit of distress, bit of all sorts. Okay. Gonna have a nice red flag, because why not? Let's just pop these curtains in that red. There we are. Okay. Let's just do these. Let's just take that board on and mix it in. Do the centre of this piece. So, yeah, artistic license, isn't it? You can do your pieces however, whatever floats your boat, really. There isn't necessarily a right or a wrong. It's not as if I'm trying to make it work with an image that's pre-coloured for me from, you know, I am choosing colours that I like and I wanted to use. There we are. And on the basis that tents would have been made by similar companies at a similar sort of time, we'll keep the two that are essentially the same mould, the same colours. There we are. The thinner paint is making my life easier, so don't be afraid to thin your paints down. So they are water-based, so there's nothing wrong with doing that. There we are. Let's just tidy that door up. There we are. Now, okay. So there is a little flag, just to be really difficult, on there. And another little flag there. And we'll get the brown out, because we're going to need some brown. Good evening, Faith. Thank you for joining, darling. There we are. So, let's just paint the buckets or the baskets on the end of there. There we are. Some strings on the sides. That works. Yeah. It's amazing how much just adding a little bit of extra in actually does, isn't it? There we are. Why do I set myself such a challenge? I do, don't I? Every week I set myself a challenge. There we are. Will we do? Well, maybe. Right, let's just clear the decks of some of this mess. Oh, didn't want to do that. Did not want to do that. There we are. Because we have a little, it's a bit wet. My bad. Let me just mop the mess. There we are. And we'll tackle that. There we are. Later on. Right. Now I'm going to dispose of this lot before I put my mucky mitts in it, because we know what I'm like. I am the most untidy creature. And we will end up with our mitts in it. There we are. Let's just give this a bit of a blast and get rid of the blue off the hands. We have got the inevitable varnish to come. So there we are. Some of this will be there. Some of this will be there. Okay. Let's find a cream crackered brush. So matte varnish, because I'm wanting everything to stay matte. Let's hope that that is dry so we don't cover too much, and then we'll worry about, I'll tidy it up of some of the areas that I'm not impressed with off the live. But there we are, because otherwise we might just be here, and by the time I've added some paste and things, it might not be so obvious either. So you don't want great big globs of varnish on your pieces, because that isn't going to help matters. So that's, I've already picked up some of the red paint from there. That wasn't fully dry, but that's okay. It's actually giving me quite a nice dirty effect. Let's just take the rest of that off there so we don't transfer it over, and whip off the extra that I've got on here that is going to take forever to dry if I don't take it off. You can see that that needs a bit of a blast. We will be getting the details into that back imminently with a product that I haven't used for a wee while, because, well, why not? So that's still a bit wet, but that's okay. That's muddied that up a bit, but that's also okay. I don't have a real issue with that. There we are. Now, it doesn't matter if that brown spreads around a little bit. The red's another matter on this. There we are. It'll just add a little bit of a sense of age and out in the water. Oh dear. Oh, here we are. Out in the rain, and because circus tents are not pristine in colour, are they? Of course they're not. There we are. And that's, as I say, if you're doing this not on a live, just wait for it to dry properly, ladies. There we are. There we are. Oh, right. Let's just clear these stacks of some of this mass, of which there is now an inordinate amount of stuff on the desk, in the way, making a mess and stopping us getting at things. There we are. Right, so let's just pop those out over there. They can sit and dry just while we tackle that frame. Okay, so we've got our wooden frame, which looks a bit boring at the moment. So let us just take the wool-coloured lazur in steel blue. It'll provide a contrast. There we are. And I can wipe it back. So this is a really, really rich dark blue. And I don't really want to go splatting it every which way, because that's not the look we're wanting. There we are. But it's going to provide a contrast. So let's just add this on. And it will sink in. I know from past experience this is a stain. There we are. And it will allow me to see the wood grain. There we are. It's just going to provide some contrast. And if you look, you see all the details in that wood are still visible through this. And it's the joy of using the lazurs as a wood stain. I don't think you've certainly not seen me use these ones like this before. I can wipe that while it's wet. There we are. Let's just carry on. So if you wet your piece, then it'll spread further and will fade down. So that really quite scary looking dark blue is actually much more subtle when you only have a thin layer of it, and that's because of its transparency. Right, let's just do that corner. You see, there's nothing like adding to the traumas, is there? There we are. Oh, I'm sorry if that's just made anyone go horribly seasick. We're if I just drop that. Oh, there, that's where I've just dropped that. Yep. It's just going to finish. It's a beautiful blue, Sheila. Beautiful, beautiful shirt. Yeah. And there are now quite a few shops in the UK. It used to be quite difficult to find Pentacolor products in the UK, but there are now quite a few because there is a relatively new UK import wholesaler who's imported and put them in her managed to get them into lots of her retailer network shops. So yeah, which is nice. I used to live in fear of ultimately not being able to get hold of the Pentacolor products, because the company that I think first bought them, or certainly brought them to my attention, shut away a few years ago now, and then they became really quite difficult to find. And Pentart will be at the NEC with that company in the autumn. They're introducing a homemaker area to the Christmas crafts and the crafting, so yet another area, and that's going to have a big workshop make and take component to that part of the show, with several brand ambassadors from multiple brands coming in to showcase the products of the companies that they work for. So I may or may not be there. It depends a little bit on hurry. There we are. There we are. So we now have a nice contrasted frame that can sit over there. Really simple to do. Shows that you don't need to overthink things. You don't make life very complicated. You could, I could have picked up a medium. You can still see bits of white from varnish on these, and they're still slightly tacky. So let me just give these a bit more of a blush stripe. And then we're going to dirty all of these up, because in a field they're not going to be clean, are they? Of course they're not. Of course they're not. That's definitely needing to be in amongst the mud. I'll endeavour to stand up and reach for some bits and pieces that are tucked out of the way. Aha! Oh, there's even, yeah, there's plenty in there. That always makes a change, doesn't it? Right. So, honestly, there is stuff in here. Might be throwing this away at the end of today. I do have several, so I can go and grab another one, but I think there'll be enough in here to like. So this is antique paste in the same way as antique. Now this is a wax-based product, and I have solvent-based cleaner on my brush. These brushes live permanently in the solvent-based cleaner so that they don't go solid. Okay, but we're going to then have this. There we are. That's better. There we are. It's a great leveler and tidier upper of things. Yeah, I might end up having to go and get another one of those. There we are. That's a bit more colour into that. So As I say, just be aware it is a solvent-based product. There we are. But I think that then looks much more like how it would in reality in a field. Yeah, it just works, Anna. It just works. Oops, I do have. There we are. There's more gubbins at the back of there. Yeah, it's a real game changer, isn't it? The antiquing. And you can do everything before you wipe back with this, unlike the antiquing gels where you really need to wipe it back straight away. But it just makes such a huge completely changes things. Total and utter game changer is the wax, or this antique paste. Don't be tempted to do it with an ordinary wax because that won't wipe off. But it just does sort things out. There we are. And I'll end up with sticky, mucky, yucky hands. There's no question about it. But it's a great thing if you want something that's vintaged, which is one of the reasons why I painted everything with the cream white right at the beginning, because it just gives that base to work with. Yeah, I do definitely think it's going to be time for a new one of those. There we are. Oh. Right. Let's get some paste out from there. There we are. And now the word can pop. Right. Wow. Pot 4 to the bin. Shouldn't be doing happy. I've had some of my products open for so long, ladies. Right. So I have, this is a wax. And this one is brass. So I'm just going to add that onto the top of there. Little bits onto those. There we are. And that one will not wipe back, ladies. There we are. Right. All components suitably done. So I have some bits of paper and some ephemera, and these are literally pieces that I've had left from. So let's just pop that off center. So this is a die cut ephemera. Yeah, it's quite thick, and that's fine. But it's got a thick edge. There we are. So let's we're going paper to paper, so that will work. This will not give me any wriggle room. And that is just fine. Right, so we are going to do some bits and pieces before we stick some of this stuff down. So I don't need all of that because we're going to cover it up, and I don't want those leaves coming through there. I might just give this a little bit of a haircut. Yes, we're definitely going to need to give you a cheeky haircut. So this is a piece of the ephemera. So this should have a removable backing. When we can't find the removable backing, we'll just stick some glue on it because it's going to be easier. So that piece is going to go into there. Okay. And I have the little rabbit from the collection, because magicians come out of their hats, don't they? And that is going to sit there. So I'm going to need a little bit of a bumper to support that in a minute. But we're going to do that. And that. And that. And that. So those will get glued down in place. And we have, which I can do after the live, as long as you can see what I'm going to do and how I'm going to pop it. So we have the vagabond. We have some other pieces that I'm wanting to add into here. There we are. I'm just going to pop some of these pieces in and around. And this is going to look completely different to how I'd planned it, but that's also just okay. So we're going to disguise the top of the vagabond's head. We're going to pop that there. We're going to pop that there. I'm going to pop that onto there. We're going to pop that piece, that cog, onto there. We'll tackle some of these pieces. We're going to have a little bit of a cog there and a little bit of a floral. And that can go there. We're going to pop a little more cog into there. We're going to stick a cog into there because I like it and because we can. And we're going to take another little floral there. And a little flower here. There we are. And these are just these bits, the little bits of the so those were ephemera pieces. There we are. Let me just move that into there. Okay. And let's just pop that up onto there. So that allows my journey begins with things. And I should just glue all of those down. And then we've got the word illusion. And then we're going to pop our hot air balloons in like that. So when everything is fully dry, I will pop these all on place with heavy body gel. There we are. Let's just let that catch up. There we are. And I will glue these all in place. And I might just add a little bit of wax around the frame. So ladies, I trust that that is a project that you've enjoyed seeing coming together. So it's not complicated. We've used the new wall decor Circus as a wood stain. So the colours in that collection really extend the existing Circus gels and the Circus liquids. We've reverted to the old favourite of the antique paste to age the pieces, so it looks like they actually might have been sitting in a field. There we are. I can go right. No, I think we're going to have it half up, half down. In a field, we've used our varnish to protect everything, our decoupage glue to stick our rice paper down and protect it. And altogether, I've had a lovely evening with the select few of you who've managed to find the live tonight. So, as I say, I will stick everything in place and ultimately will then post the picture on social media next week or later on this week even. So I hope to see you online next week, and take care, ladies. Be kind to yourselves, because that's the most important thing, and I trust you have a good week. Bye.